سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابه أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما. So we're continuing the chapter concerning anger. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to control it, understand it and control it. So we began talking a little bit about what is anger, some of its detriments and some of the riwayats are connected to that. So today we want to look at what is the reality, haqiqat al-ghadab, what is its essence. So Ibn Qudama rahimahullah ta'ala, he writes in Minhaj al-Qasidin, he says that the reality or the essence of anger, it's the boiling of blood in the hope of taking retribution, taking retribution, intiqam. So the blood boils to get back at somebody, right? And so therefore, the blood is actually like boiling in the hearts. And so then as it boils in the hearts, then this boiling blood, this very hot blood, it flows into the veins, and then it ultimately goes up into the brain. And obviously it's going to have a very detrimental effect there. And up into the top of the body, just as water when it boils in a kettle, it moves up. So similarly this fire and rage of anger, it moves up through the body and up into the head. And then it doesn't stop there. What happens is the face becomes red and the eyes they redden, and the skin also even becomes affected. And all of this effect is actually sort of reflecting the color of the blood itself, because the blood is really not boiling. And that's what we say even in English, my blood is boiling, right? Okay. So, now, when we look at anger, and as we said earlier, someone would say, well, then why do we even have it if it's so detrimental and destructive? And what's the purpose of it? It has a purpose, and actually the people, in respect to anger, they either are too much or too less or moderate, which is what should be there. And so obviously too much of anger is definitely very blameworthy, and it's not praiseworthy by any stretch of the imagination. And what happens is that it sends out the mind and the thinking process, and also the body out of control totally. And so then, in that case, so the human being, he doesn't remain with his thinking process, he can't think properly, and also his decision-making is very, very negatively compromised. And now on the other hand, if he doesn't have any anger, this is also not good. Because anger is actually, it's a natural trait. It's, we call in Arabic, a ghariza. It's a response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put there for a particular reason. And if it's used accordingly, then it's not only beneficial, but it's absolutely necessary. Now, if a person doesn't have any anger whatsoever, the places where he's supposed to get angry, where he's supposed to defend rights, he's to defend the honor of his family, etc. Right? So, he'll be without any shuur, as it were. He'll be without any feelings. So this is also going to be blameworthy. At the same time, he won't be able to fight against his lower desires. It's a very interesting point that he makes. This anger also, when we try to overpower the lower desires, what happens is that we get angry when we see ourselves succumbing to our lower desires and our lower wishes, base sort of animalistic tendencies. So that anger, we get angry at ourselves for succumbing to those lower, qualities, and so that anger comes to our aid, and it serves us in this case as well. So having some anger is absolutely necessary, but it needs to be a moderation. In other words, controlling it when it's not serving us, and accepting it and accepting it, acknowledging it when it is serving its purpose for which it's been placed there. And so he goes on to mention that this anger, if it gets stronger and stronger, then what happens is, as earlier was mentioned, it's like a fire, and it creates blindness, and it also creates deafness. And so a person who is overpowered with anger, he doesn't see properly, he doesn't see things in their proper perspective, and also he doesn't listen to any proper advice. Anger has now overpowered him and has overcome him. And as we mentioned earlier, it goes up into the brain, and the brain is totally affected, and it's not able to function properly with balance. And it's likened, there's a simile which he mentions. It's like a fire. What happens is, to the brain of the person who is filled with anger, it's like a cave that is now, caught on fire inside. And so what happens, that the whole fire becomes blackened inside with the smoke and the heat. And even if he had a little light with him, that light would have been extinguished, and so he can't see his way, and therefore neither can he stand properly, and neither can he hear anything, and he doesn't see anything. Right? And also he's not able to put out that fire because it's taken control. And so, like, in a similar way, this is what happens to the heart and the mind. It's like just totally engulfed in flames and smoke and heat, and obviously it's not going to work. Neither the heart is going to feel properly, neither is the mind going to think properly. So obviously we need to control our anger. Allah give us all tawfiq. And also, even if we look at the physical effects, you look at somebody who's angry, if we would look at ourselves in the mirror when we get angry, it's not a pleasant sight, So the color changes, and then even the body starts to shake. And actually, all the actions of the person, they just go totally haywire, and they go out of whack. And even so, his physical appearance, becomes, deformed, and it becomes compromised. And even we'll find angry persons who are otherwise very intelligent and holding positions of responsibility. Now they start acting like madmen or women. And so had the person who was experiencing this anger had looked into the mirror and saw himself, then obviously they would really accost themselves for allowing themselves to slip to such a position. Okay, now, it's very critical to then understand, rather than waiting for anger to come and treat it, what are the means, or what are those issues that bring on ghadab? So if we understand that, then it will be helpful in treating them. So among the things that bring on the anger, number one is conceit. Because as we mentioned, anger usually comes as a retribution type of response. So if someone is conceited, thinks himself great, then obviously anyone or anything which is, sort of challenging that I'm great, so obviously there's going to be huge anger. Also, and this is very critical, mazah, joking, and we probably talked about this in several other occasions, that, joking all the time is not a great idea, because what happens is that, number one, too much of laughter hardens the heart. One. Number two, much of joking is about, belittling other people, making a joke about somebody. He did this, he said that, look at this guy. And so what it is, it's actually, it's a kind of ta'an, as we say. We're sort of poking, that's what we say, poking fun of someone. But the fact of the matter is that we should be respecting one another, not poking fun at one another. And it may, and if it doesn't blow up, then it will leave an impression, and nobody likes to be poked fun at. Even though, no, I was just joking. And then sometimes I was just joking, and he doesn't take it as a joke, and it ends up in animosity. It can end up in a fight. It can end up in death. It happens. Over a joke, people end up killing themselves. So this joking has to, a joking which is, Nabi Sallallahu also, as we mentioned previously, Nabi Sallallahu also to lighten the sort of burden of, of deen and responsibilities. Now and again we say something humorous, but not at the expense of somebody's honor or dignity. We don't joke about somebody or say something that just sort of lightens up the atmosphere. That's fine. That's also the prophetic way. Nabi also was smiling, but he didn't used to laugh loud. That's another thing. This loud laughing is something that was really disliked by Allah and His Rasul. And Nabi was never seen laughing so that his mouth was open, his tongue was never. He would smile, but he wouldn't laugh loudly. So Allah give us tawfiq to control that. Thirdly, mumarat. This is also, arguing. Of course, naturally in arguments, people, they lose their patience. And so, therefore, we would do well to curtail arguments. When we see an argument coming on, and Nabi also mentioned that the people who leave arguing, then they will get a house on the side of Jannah. So just keep in mind. Muwadat, opposition, opposing. You said that, you're opposing me, I'll oppose you. And so obviously we're going to get into another, angry situation. So opposition one to another should be avoided as far as possible. And obviously, ghadr, breaking or breaching of trust or betrayal of any type, obviously that's going to cause huge anger. So obviously we would never want to betray the trust of anyone. And also, shiddat al-hirs ala fudul al-mali wal-jah. This is one of the main things. Our covetousness, our desire for more extra, wealth and fame and name and positioning, and good status, social status. So obviously, because we want that and someone else has it or someone is infringing on that, then also this is going to bring on jealousy along with ghadab. Because of jealousy, anger. And so we have a three-way, disaster here. And so these are all really these traits in and of themselves. Besides the fact that they bring about anger, they themselves are things that we should be, far away from, as it were. And so what we'll do is, inshallah, in our next sitting, we'll talk about what are the ways also mentioned in Sunnah and also a little bit more detail, what are practical applications and practical thinking process that we can, inshallah, enact to bring about a control and ghadab, bring about a control in our anger. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq and make us among those who listen and are affected and implement. Ameen thumma ameen wa akhir da'wana. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.